The alien ship hung in the sky above New York City like a mountain made of silver. It was the year 2147, and humanity was about to learn that they were not alone in the universe. Millions of people stood in the streets, looking up with fear and wonder. Children pointed at the massive vessel. Old men wept. The world held its breath. When the aliens finally spoke, their message was simple. They called themselves the Galactic Concord, a union of hundreds of species that had ruled the stars for millions of years. They welcomed humanity to the cosmic community. They offered trade, knowledge, and protection. But their smiles were cold, and their eyes held the look of farmers examining new cattle. Ambassador Chen Wei was chosen to represent Earth. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. But behind those eyes lived a sharp mind that had navigated the worst of human politics for 30 years. She met the alien diplomats with grace and humility. She bowed when they expected her to bow. She smiled when they insulted her species. She accepted every unfair treaty and every one-sided deal with nothing but gratitude. The Velfrey hegemony, tall beings with skin like polished obsidian, laughed at human technology. They called fusion engines primitive fire and mocked the slow colony ships that took decades to reach nearby stars. The Krix Dominion, massive creatures covered in armored scales, forced humanity to sign protection treaties that were really just a polite form of slavery. Earth paid tribute. Earth provided workers. Earth bent its knee to every demand. And Ambassador Chen Wei smiled through all of it. Behind closed doors, the United Earth Council watched her performances with grim satisfaction. They knew something the aliens did not. They had found something that would change everything. It happened in 2089, 58 years before first contact. A small probe, sent to map the outer edges of the solar system, detected something impossible. There was a hole in space itself, hidden in the frozen darkness beyond Neptune. Scientists called it an anomaly. The military called it a potential threat. But when they finally sent a crewed mission to investigate, they discovered something beyond their wildest dreams. The hole was a gate. Not just a doorway to another place, but a doorway to another kind of place entirely. On the other side lay a pocket dimension, a universe within a universe where the normal rules did not apply. Time moved differently there. Resources were unlimited, and space itself seemed to bend to human will. As if the dimension had been waiting for someone to find it, they named it the Shadow. The scientists who first entered the Shadow reported experiences that sounded like madness. They spoke of darkness that was not empty, but full. They described a place where thought became matter, where intention shaped reality. Some went mad. Others emerged transformed. Their minds expanded in ways they could not explain. But all of them agreed on one thing. The Shadow was humanity's greatest discovery and its greatest secret. When the aliens arrived in 2147, the United Earth Council had already spent 58 years preparing. They knew, somehow, that contact was coming. They knew that humanity would be judged weak and primitive. They knew that the galaxy was not kind to the weak. So they decided to lie. Every failed colony mission actually carried engineers and workers into the Shadow. Every lost mining vessel secretly ferried materials through the gate. The aliens saw humans struggling to build a handful of small stations in their home system. They never thought to wonder where all those resources were really going. They never questioned why humanity stopped trying so hard to advance. They simply assumed that humans had accepted their place at the bottom of the galactic order. Inside the Shadow, humanity built. The first shipyards were small, experimental. Engineers had to learn how the pocket dimension worked, how to shape its strange matter into something useful. They failed often. They died sometimes. But they never stopped working. Generation after generation was born in the Shadow, living their entire lives in darkness. knowing they would never see the sun. They were told stories about Earth, about blue skies and green forests, and an ocean that stretched to the horizon. They were told that one day, their children or their children's children would see these wonders. But first, they had to build. 50 years passed. Then 100. The shipyards grew larger. The technology grew stranger. Human scientists, freed from the limitations of normal physics, developed weapons that existed in multiple dimensions at once. They created shields that made ships flicker between moments in time. They bred artificial intelligences that could coordinate millions of drones in perfect harmony. They built warships the size of small moons, armed with cannons that could crack planets. And still, Ambassador Chen Wei smiled and bowed to the alien masters. The Concord races grew comfortable. They stopped watching humanity closely. Why would they? Humans were useful servants, nothing more. They provided cheap labor and paid their tribute on time. They never complained, never threatened, never showed any sign of defiance. The elder races had seen 1,000 species like them, weak beings who understood their place in the natural order. They did not know about the shadow. They did not know about the generations living and dying in darkness, building weapons of impossible power. They did not know about the children who trained for war from the moment they could walk, who learned to pilot warships before they learned to read, who swore oaths to defend an Earth they had never seen. 300 years passed this way. Ambassador Chen Wei grew old and died, and others took her place, continuing the great performance. The lie became tradition. The deception became culture. Every human who knew the truth understood that they would probably never see the moment when the mask finally dropped. But they kept the faith anyway, because they knew that moment would come. In the shadow, the hidden Armada waited. 37,000 warships, each one bristling with weapons the galaxy had never seen. Millions of soldiers, trained and ready, burning with purpose. They were the children of the shadow, the descendants of those first engineers who had dared to dream of something greater than survival. Earth pretended to be weak. Earth pretended to be broken. Earth let the galaxy believe the lie, but in the darkness beyond the stars, humanity was preparing for the day when the Shadow Gate would finally open, and the truth would shake the foundations of the Concord itself. That day was coming soon. Admiral Yuki Tanaka was born in darkness, the darkness of night, which gives way to dawn, not the darkness of closed eyes, which opens to light. She was born in the shadow, that impossible place between dimensions, where the sun was only a story and Earth was only a dream. Her mother had been born there too, and her grandmother and her great-grandmother. 4 generations of Tanakas had lived and died in the shadow, building ships and training for a war they knew might never come in their lifetimes. Now, Yuki stood on the bridge of the Prometheus Unbound, the largest warship humanity had ever built. And she was looking at Earth for the first time. It was more beautiful than the stories had said. The blue was deeper, the white clouds more delicate, the green of the continents more alive. She had seen photographs and videos her whole life, but nothing had prepared her for the real thing. For a moment, she forgot about the Crick's fleet. She forgot about the battle to come. She simply stared at her home, the home she had never seen, and felt tears forming in her eyes. "Admiral," her communications officer said softly, "War Master Vrex is hailing us. He wants to know what we are." Tanaka wiped her eyes and straightened her uniform. She was 93 years old, kept young by Shadowborn medicine, and she had waited her entire life for this moment. Her grandfather had told her stories about this day. Her mother had sung songs about it. Now it was here, and she would not waste it on tears. "Tell him we are the species he thought he knew," she said. Then she turned to her tactical officer. "Status of the enemy fleet?" 12,000 ships advancing in standard Krix attack formation. Planet crackers are powering weapons. Estimated time to engagement: 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Tanaka had trained for this battle for 70 years. She had run simulations 10,000 times. She knew every Krix tactic, every weakness, every strength. But simulations were not real. The ships on her view screen were real. The lives at stake were real. The weight of 300 years of preparation pressed down on her shoulders. All fleet units, she said, her voice carried to 37,000 ships. This is Admiral Tanaka. For 300 years, our ancestors lived in darkness so that this day could come. They built these ships with their hands. They trained us with their love. They died believing in a future they would never see. She paused. Today, we honor their sacrifice. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity really is. All units, engage. The battle began. Human weapons were unlike anything the Krix had ever faced. Phase cannons fired beams that existed partially outside normal space, passing through shields as if they were not there. Temporal torpedoes struck enemy ships and aged them centuries in seconds, turning new metal into ancient rust. Drone swarms launched from carrier vessels, millions of tiny machines that bred and evolved mid-combat, adapting to every defense the Dominion tried. The Krix fought bravely. War Master Rex led from the front, his flagship charging into the human lines, its massive guns blazing. For a few minutes, it seemed like the Dominion might break through by sheer courage and weight of fire. But courage could not stop weapons that bent the laws of physics. Weight of fire meant nothing against ships that flickered between moments in time, becoming ghosts that could not be hit. One by one, the Krix ships began to die. Tanaka watched the battle from her command chair, issuing orders in a calm voice, guiding her fleet like a conductor guiding an orchestra. She felt no joy in the destruction. These were living beings dying out there, even if they had come to enslave her people. Each explosion was a tragedy, even if it was necessary. The enemy flagship is attempting to retreat, her tactical officer reported. Tanaka considered letting them go. The battle was won. The message was sent. But then she thought about what would happen if Rex returned to the Dominion. He would tell them about the Shadow Gate. He would tell them about the human fleet. The Dominion would prepare, would adapt, would come back with overwhelming force. No retreats, she said quietly. Finish it. The Prometheus Unbound turned toward the Krix flagship. War Master Rex saw the massive human vessel approaching and understood that he would not see another dawn. He had lived for 300 years. He had conquered 17 worlds. Now he would die above a planet he had thought to take without a fight. War Master, his tactical officer, said. Final orders? Rex looked at the human ship, at its impossible weapons, at its gleaming hull. 300 years. The humans had deceived the entire galaxy for 300 years. He felt something unexpected stirring in his chest. Not anger, not fear, respect. Tell the Dominion what happened here, he said. Tell them the humans are not what we thought they were. Tell them everything has changed. The phase cannon struck his flagship a moment later. The vessel broke apart in a flash of light, scattering debris across space. War Master Rex, conqueror of 17 worlds, was gone. The battle lasted 4 hours in total. When it ended, not a single Krix ship remained intact. The human fleet had lost 200 vessels, mostly smaller craft that had pushed too far forward. 200 ships and 12,000 lives, against a fleet that had expected to enslave billions. Tanaka sat in silence on her bridge, looking at the debris field that had once been an invasion force. Behind her, the Shadow Gate still churned, that wound in reality that had made all of this possible. Through it lay the shipyards and factories and weapons that had taken 3 centuries to build. This fleet was only the beginning. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "we are receiving transmissions from across the Concord. Every major power is demanding to know what just happened." Tanaka nodded slowly. The real battle was just beginning. The Krix were only one empire among many. The Valkyrie hegemony was larger. The Rithani collective was older. And there were dozens of other powers who would see humanity as a threat to be destroyed. "Let them demand," she said. "We will give them their answer soon enough." She looked at Earth again, at that beautiful blue sphere floating in the void. Her ancestors had never seen it. Her mother had never seen it. But they had believed in it enough to die for it. Now it was her turn to protect it. The Krix war fleet arrived at Earth on a Tuesday morning. 12,000 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and filled the sky above the blue planet. They were massive vessels, covered in spikes and armor, designed to frighten as much as to fight. At the center of the formation hung the flagship, a monster of black metal 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could turn continents to glass. High War Master Rex stood on the command deck of that flagship, looking down at Earth through the viewscreen. He was old, even by Krix standards, and he had conquered 17 worlds in his long career. This would be his 18th. He felt no excitement, no anticipation. Conquering humans was not a challenge. It was paperwork. His communications officer opened the channel to Earth's defense network. Rex cleared his throat and began his standard speech. "People of Earth," he said, his voice carrying the boredom of someone who had given this speech many times before. "The Krix Dominion has determined that your species has failed to meet its obligations under the Protection Treaty. Your tribute payments are behind schedule. Your labor quotas are unfilled. This is unacceptable." He paused, examining his claws. "You will surrender your orbital platforms. You will surrender your colonial holdings. You will provide 40% of your population for redistribution to Dominion work camps. Resistance is, as always, inadvisable. You have 1 hour to comply." He cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. "Wake me when they surrender." Rex was walking toward his quarters when the response came. It was not what he expected. "We decline." 2 words. The human transmission contained nothing else. Just those 2 words, delivered in a calm, almost gentle voice. Rex stopped walking. He turned slowly, his massive head tilting in confusion. Behind him, his officers had frozen at their stations. None of them had ever heard such a thing. Prey species did not refuse the Dominion. It simply did not happen. "Did they say decline?" Rex asked. "Yes, War Master. They declined." Rex felt an unfamiliar emotion stirring in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it as amusement. He began to laugh, a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the command deck. His officers joined in, nervous at first, then genuinely entertained by the absurdity. Humans refusing the Dominion. It was like a mouse threatening a mountain. "Prepare the planet crackers," Rex said, still chuckling. "If they want to die as fools, we will grant their wish." That was when the alarms started screaming. Every sensor on the flagship lit up at once. Every warning system activated. The tactical officer's laughter died in his throat as he stared at his readouts, his scales turning pale. "War Master," he whispered, "something is happening. There is a hole opening in space. High orbit, directly between us and the planet." Rex turned to the view screen. At first, he saw nothing but stars. Then he saw the darkness dot. It started as a point, smaller than a pinprick. But it grew. It grew fast. In seconds, it was 100 meters across. In a minute, it was a kilometer. It kept growing, a wound in reality itself, edges rippling with energies that made the ship's sensors howl in protest. The darkness was absolute, deeper than any void. and it seemed to pull at the light around it like a hungry mouth. When the hole reached 300 kilometers in diameter, it stopped growing. For a long moment, nothing happened. The Crick's fleet hung frozen. 12,000 warships staring at an impossible tear in the fabric of space. Then something came through. The first ship emerged from the darkness, like a whale breaching the surface of an ocean. It was enormous, larger than any vessel Rex had ever seen, larger than some space stations. Its hull was made of materials that gleamed with colors that hurt his eyes, covered in weapons that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Behind it came another ship, equally massive. Then another. And another. Ships poured from the wound in space in an endless stream. Warships the size of moons. Carrier vessels surrounded by swarms of fighters. Sleek destroyers and massive dreadnoughts. They emerged in perfect formation, spreading out to surround the Crick's fleet like predators circling wounded prey. Rex watched in silence as the count climbed. 500 ships. 1,000. 5,000. 10,000. The tactical officer had stopped announcing numbers. He simply sat at his station, staring at the view screen, his mouth hanging open. After 6 hours, the flow finally stopped. 37,000 human warships hung in formation around Earth, dwarfing the Crick's invasion fleet. They were beautiful in a terrible way, their alien hulls catching the light of the sun, their weapons ports glowing with barely contained energy. A transmission came through. The same calm voice as before. "I, War Master Rex, we asked you to leave. You refused. Now we must insist." Rex found that his legs would not hold him. He sat down heavily in his command chair, staring at the impossible fleet surrounding his forces. 300 years. Humanity had hidden this for 300 years. Every Boeing diplomat, every tribute payment, every act of submission had been a lie. And he had never suspected. No one had ever suspected. "What are you?" He breathed. The voice that answered was not the same one from before. It belonged to a woman, and it carried the weight of centuries. "We are the species you thought you knew," she said. "We are the children of Earth, and you are in our home." Rex looked at his tactical officer. The younger Crix was trembling, his scales clattering against each other. The numbers on his screen told a simple story. The human weapons were operating on principles the Dominion could not understand. Their shields flickered in ways that suggested they existed partially outside normal space. Their formation was perfect, coordinated by intelligences that reacted faster than any organic mind. "War Master," the tactical officer said quietly, "we cannot win this fight." Rex knew it was true. He had conquered 17 worlds. He had never lost a battle. But looking at that fleet, at those impossible ships emerging from that impossible darkness, he understood that his winning streak was about to end. "All ships," he said, his voice hollow. "Attack formation." If he was going to die, he would die fighting. It was the Crick's way. The human fleet waited, patient and still, as the Dominion warships began their final charge. The destruction of the Crick's war fleet sent shockwaves through the galactic concord. Within hours of the battle, every major power in the galaxy had pointed their sensors toward Earth. What they saw defied everything they thought they knew. A human fleet larger than most combined navies. A tier in space that led somewhere impossible. Technology that made the Concord's most advanced weapons look like toys. Emergency meetings were called on 1,000 worlds. Diplomats screamed at each other across interstellar distances. Military leaders demanded explanations that no one could give. The galaxy had watched humanity for 300 years. They had studied human culture, human psychology, human capabilities. They had been absolutely certain that they understood this species. They had understood nothing. On the Velthary homeworld, The High Council gathered in their ancient chamber of obsidian and gold. They were the oldest of the elder races, the founders of the Concord, the beings who had shaped galactic civilization for millions of years. They had treated humans as useful servants, nothing more. Now they stared at holographic images of human warships and felt something they had not experienced in 10,000 years. Fear. How did we miss this? Demanded Counselor Veth, his obsidian skin reflecting the light of the display. 300 years. They built an armada for 300 years, and we saw nothing. They played us, said Counselor Myra, the youngest member of the High Council. Every bowing ambassador, every tribute payment, every act of submission. It was all theater. It was all deception, Veth corrected. They are more dangerous than we imagined. We must destroy them before they destroy us. But others on the council were not so certain. The Rithani Collective, ancient beings of pure thought, argued for caution. The humans had just destroyed a Krix invasion fleet without significant losses. A direct attack might fail. And if it failed, what then? The debate raged for days while the galaxy held its breath. On Earth, the United Earth Council met in a bunker deep beneath the mountains of Switzerland. These were the descendants of the original planners, the men and women who had inherited the Great Secret. Some of their families had kept the truth for 10 generations. Now the moment they had prepared for had finally arrived, and they faced a choice that would shape the future of their species. "We have the power to conquer them," said General Morrison, commander of Earth's conventional forces. "The Shadow Fleet can take any system in the Concord. We could become what they were. We could rule." President Chun looked at the general with tired eyes. She was the great-great-granddaughter of the original ambassador Chen Wei, and she had grown up knowing that this day would come. Her ancestor had smiled through insults and accepted unfair treaties because she knew that one day her descendants would have the power to demand justice. But what kind of justice? "If we conquer them," President Chen said slowly, "we become them. We become another empire built on fear and domination. We prove that they were right about the universe, that only the strong survive and the weak must serve. And if we don't?" General Morrison asked. "They will never stop fearing us. They will unite against us. They will try to destroy us again and again until they succeed or we destroy them first." The argument continued for hours. Some wanted revenge for centuries of humiliation. Others wanted security through overwhelming force. But President Chun kept thinking about her ancestor, about the woman who had smiled through insults because she believed in something greater than revenge. "There is another way," she said finally. "We can offer them something they have never seen, something they do not believe is possible." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the night sky. Somewhere up there, the Shadow Fleet waited, ready to burn the galaxy if she gave the order. "We offer them equality," she said. "We offer them partnership. We tell them that we built this armada not to conquer, but to protect. We show them a different way." The council erupted in argument. Some called her naive. Others called her weak. But President Chun had made her decision. The next day, Ambassador Chen Wei VII addressed the Galactic Concord. She was 347 years old, her life extended by Shadowborn medicine, and she had served as humanity's face to the galaxy for over a century. She had smiled through more insults than she could count. She had bowed to beings who saw her as little more than an animal. Now she stood straight and spoke with the full weight of humanity's hidden strength behind her. "You taught us an important lesson," she said, her voice carrying across 10,000 light years. "You taught us that the galaxy respects only strength, that kindness is weakness, that the gentle are meant to serve the cruel." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We learned. We spent 300 years building strength that you could not imagine. We developed weapons that make your technology look primitive. We could destroy you. We could enslave you. We could do to you exactly what you did to us." The Concord representatives listened in silence. Many expected a declaration of war. Many expected demands for tribute, for surrender, for vengeance. "But we choose differently," Ambassador Chun continued. "We choose to offer you what you never offered us: equality, partnership, a galaxy where species work together instead of dominating each other. A future where strength means protecting the weak, not crushing them." She laid out humanity's terms: full equality for all Concord members, an end to vassalage and protection treaties, open access to the Shadowgate's resources for any species willing to join, a new alliance built on mutual respect. The younger races responded immediately. Species who had been oppressed for millennia saw hope for the first time. Beings who had been forced to serve saw a chance at freedom. Within days, dozens of civilizations had applied to join humanity's new alliance, but the Elder Powers refused. The Velthari would not bow to former servants. The Krix Dominion would not forgive the death of War Master Vrex. The Rithani Collective, proud and ancient, would not accept equals. Ambassador Chun had expected this. President Chun had expected this. The United Earth Council had expected this. "Very well," the ambassador said. "To those who join us, we offer friendship. To those who oppose us, we offer one chance to reconsider. After that, there will be consequences." The galaxy had held its breath for weeks. Now it prepared for war. The war lasted 11 years. It began with the Velthari, who believed their ancient civilization could crush the upstart humans through sheer weight of numbers. They gathered a fleet of 50,000 ships and launched an assault on the Shadowgate itself. They believed that if they could destroy the gate, they could cut off humanity's supply of impossible weapons and impossible ships. They were wrong. Admiral Tanaka met them at the edge of the solar system with a force half their size. But human ships did not fight fairly. Phase cannons cut through Velthari shields like water through paper. Temporal torpedoes aged their vessels to dust. Drone swarms evolved in real time, finding weaknesses in Velthari formations and exploiting them with ruthless efficiency. The battle lasted 3 days. When it ended, the Velthari fleet had been reduced to scattered debris, and Admiral Tanaka had lost fewer than 1,000 ships. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The elder races had believed their technology was supreme. They had believed that their millions of years of development had given them advantages no younger species could overcome. Now they learned the truth. 300 years of focused development, free from the limitations of normal physics, had allowed humanity to leap past them entirely. One by one, the Elder Powers fell. The Krix Dominion came next. Burning for revenge after the death of War Master Vrex, they threw everything they had at human positions, attacking with the fury of a wounded beast. But fury was not enough against weapons that bent reality. Dominion worlds fell to human liberation fleets, their slave populations freed, their war machines destroyed. Within 2 years, the Krix Dominion had collapsed entirely, its territory absorbed into the growing human alliance. The Rithani Collective proved more difficult. They were beings of pure thought, ancient intelligences that had transcended physical form millions of years ago. They could not be fought with guns and missiles. But humanity had spent 300 years developing more than weapons. Human scientists had learned to manipulate the quantum foundations of reality itself. They created devices that disrupted Rithani thought patterns, forced them back into physical forms, made them vulnerable. Even the Rithani learned to fear humanity. But the war was not just about destruction. For every world that human forces conquered, they offered the same choice: join the alliance as equals or face the consequences. Most chose alliance. The oppressed species of the galaxy saw humanity as liberators, not conquerors. Beings who had served the elder races for millennia now stood alongside human soldiers, fighting for a future they had never dared to dream of. Admiral Tanaka led from the front throughout the war. She was 104 years old when the final treaty was signed. Her body still strong thanks to Shadowborn medicine, but her heart was tired. She had seen too much death. She had ordered too many ships into battle. She had won victory after victory, but each victory had cost something she could never get back. The final treaty was signed on Earth, in the ruins of the old United Nations building. President Chen II stood beside Admiral Tanaka as representatives from across the galaxy filed into the hall. The Velthury High Council, humbled and diminished. The remnants of the Crick's military leadership, the Rithani Collective, returned to physical form against their will. And dozens of other species, some former enemies, some allies from the beginning. The Galactic Concord is dissolved, President Chen announced. In its place, we established the Galactic Union, a community of equals where no species dominates another, where strength is used to protect, not to oppress, where the future belongs to everyone. The document was signed. The war was over. Humanity had won. That evening, Admiral Tanaka stood on the observation deck of the Prometheus Unbound. Looking down at Earth, the ship hung in orbit, its hull scarred from 100 battles, its weapons silent at last. Below, the planet turned slowly blue and green and beautiful. Captain Sato, her aide throughout the war, stood beside her. He was young by Shadowborn standards, only 60 years old, and he had served Tanaka faithfully for decades. Was it worth it? They asked quietly. Everything we gave up? The generations who lived and died in the shadow, never knowing the sky? Tanaka considered the question for a long moment. She thought about her mother, who had died believing in a day she would never see. She thought about her grandfather, who had told her stories about Earth as a child. She thought about all the millions who had lived their entire lives in darkness, building and training and hoping. They knew, she said finally. Every one of them knew what they were fighting for. Not conquest. Not revenge. Just the chance to build something better. She watched a flock of birds wheel across the horizon, free and fearless. The sight moved her in ways she could not explain. She had commanded fleets that could destroy worlds. She had won battles that had decided the fate of civilizations. But nothing had prepared her for the simple beauty of birds flying against a blue sky. The galaxy taught humanity to hide, she said, to endure, to build in secret while others dismissed us as weak. They believed the universe was cruel, that only the strong survived, that the weak existed only to serve. She turned from the window and looked at Captain Sato. Her eyes held the weight of centuries and the lightness of hope. Now, we will teach them something different. We will teach them that strength means protecting others. That power is only worthy when it serves the powerless. That the universe does not have to be cruel. She smiled. And for the first time since the war began, it was a smile without shadows. The shadow gate opened because we finally had something worth revealing. Not our weapons, not our ships, but our choice to be better than those who came before us. Outside, the stars waited, no longer cold and threatening, but full of possibility. Humanity had hidden for 300 years. They had endured insults and oppression and the contempt of beings who saw them as nothing more than useful animals. Now they would shine, not as conquerors, not as masters, but as the species that had proven that strength and compassion could exist together. That power did not have to corrupt, that the darkness could give birth to light. The shadow gate remained open, a wound in reality that had changed everything. But it was no longer a secret. It was a promise, a doorway to a future where all species could build and grow and dream together. Admiral Tanaka looked at Earth one last time. Tomorrow, she would step onto the surface for the first time in her life. She would feel grass beneath her feet. She would breathe air that had not been recycled through machines. She would finally know the home her ancestors had sacrificed everything to protect. But tonight, she simply watched the world turn and felt at peace that the long night was over. The new dawn had begun.